The following is a discussion with Dr. Crystal at Integrity Wellness, exploring the frontiers of the basic building blocks to initiating and optimizing health and wellness. At the practice, Dr. Crystal utilizes modalities of magnetism, oxygen, and red light therapy, along with many other equally important factors, to help members achieve better and faster health outcomes that can result in long-term change. In this discussion, we focus on magnetism, oxygen, and red light, in that specific order, which is also known as the superhuman protocol, to help members improve their lives. Dr. Crystal begins the discussion with the overview of magnetism.
So magnetism, everyone, I like to start with definitions of all things because we've gotten to the point in the world where everyone has their own kind of working definition of something, and we might be talking about two totally different things. And so when we are looking at what is magnetism, most of the world believes that magnetism is magnets attracting to one another. And in fact, it's not. Magnetism is that the magnet is actually trying to attract to counter space. They both are. So it's the space between two things, these two magnets that they're attracted to. And so magnetism is essential in life. It is the attribute of electrical energy, and electrical energy becomes the principle. So we have a principle and an attribute. So think of it like thoughts and emotions. So the thought comes first, the emotion comes as a attribute or a consequence or an effect, if you will. And similarly, magnetism comes from electrical energy and the flow of that or the impedance of that. And in the natural world, we have magnetic energy that is basically like a rhythm or a pulse of the earth or of natural existence and natural living organisms. And that magnetism is what is good for the cellular level, because it's the language essentially that the cells speak with the space between. It's what they're attracted to. And so when you think about human health, we do really need to look at the cellular level and the subcellular level, the space between the cells, because that's where magnetism informs. That's where electrical energy conducts and informs the cell and is utilized by the cell. And human health fundamentally comes down to the essential basic building blocks of life, which are water, hydrogen. Hydrogen is all matter is compounded hydrogen, and electrical and magnetic energy. So oxygen. So these are the very fundamentals that give rise to the possibility of biological life. And when we focus on those for our own health and our own improvement of health or regeneration, repair, longevity, any of these topics or titles or themes and concepts, we really need to get first to the basics, and we need to make sure, are those basics present and are they optimized? Because if they're not, there's no point moving on to something else, right? So we're doing things very backwards in medicine and in the world, and we're at a point where now we can't really deny that. We can't really turn a cheek to it. We can't turn a blind eye anymore, because the results of not having the basics being met first and being in place first in each human body is evident in the statistics of chronic disease and of the numbers that we're seeing in deleterious health conditions across mostly the Western world, but across the world all over. They're not getting better, they're getting worse. And so if medicine had the answers, wouldn't we be seeing a decrease in cardiovascular deaths? Wouldn't we be seeing a decrease in cancer deaths? And so that's the point where we have to look at, what are we missing? Where is the starting point that we could look to the interface where we can make a big difference, a big change. And that's what we've done, is we look at the human body in a very different way. And when we do that and we kind of set aside all of the preconceived notions and the predetermined conditions that we have been taught, were what the body is and what the body does and how it functions, and we just look for the truth. The truth is what brings you back to the basics. And the truth is we are nature. We are natural. We are part of the universe. And when we try to deny that, or we try to think our way out of a thinking box, we can't do that, right? And that's what I think we've been doing a long time in medicine, is we've been kind of trying to attack these issues with the same approach over and over and over again, with a biochemical model that's totally reductionist in its methods, and it's not getting the effects that they're hoping for, but nobody is addressing that, right? These are very courageous conversations that need to happen around, okay, but how well are we doing? How is that working for human health and thriving and vitality and health span and living? Are we living better? Are we improving? Or are we just covering up and manipulating the body to seem like it's okay? But is it okay? How do you feel in your body? How do you move? How do you live your life? All of these factors are left out of most of medicine. And my history in medicine, I've seen it all. So I'm here at a different juncture. I'm at a crossroads where I've seen a lot of what we've been trying to do, and especially in chronic disease and chronic inflammation and all of sorts of different ailments and titles of things that medicine calls things over the years, and people don't have any hope for genuine improvement or transformation, true change, right? It's always a fix, but the fix is, how long is that going to last for, right? And so now at a point where I have looked at the body from a very different perspective, which is much more from a physics and a metaphysics perspective, a quantum physics perspective, we really need to understand that there's a lot more to our nature than just the material organ systems that we believe that are there. What keeps those organ systems together? What keeps those cells animated? Those are the questions that we need to be asking and answering and addressing far more before we're looking at the biochemical nature of disease. And so when we look at, let's just take magnetism because we started with that. Magnetism is a natural effect of electrical energy that is not man-made, here through a creative source. And it's here for our usage as a mechanism to be able to improve our health, because this is what we're made of. We're literally made of electromagnetic energy. That is what animates life. That's how the energy of life flows through you, is through the conduction of the electrical energy in nature. And your magnetic field is what's generated from that flow. And if that flow is impeded, then that magnetic field has pores, and that magnetic attribute will have almost like holes in it. And the nature of your physical body will change as a result, for good or bad. And so when we try to keep things as close to a natural source as possible, we're actually going to find that our bodies improve rather quickly, because it's restoring it back to its own natural signature, essentially. And now every human is different. Your electromagnetic signature may be slightly different than mine, just like my fingerprint is different than your fingerprint. but we still are in resonance and harmony because of the nature of the electrical and magnetic energy that creates life. So if you're created by it, then you can utilize it to fix or repair or regenerate better and more optimally. And that is far more true than looking or turning to a man-made chemical as the option to really move the needle forward in healing, if you will. When we're looking at electromagnetic energy, it's the earth has a pulse, and it's called the Schumann resonance. And every single human being, every single living organism utilizes that in the development of its own existence. And so when you allow your body to resonate with that pulse, that electromagnetic pulse that the earth gives off all the time, you will find calming in your central nervous system. You will find balancing of your brainwaves. You will find decrease in inflammation, and you'll find an absolute connection back to what it feels like to be alive again. And those things are often forgotten about or missed or not considered to be as important in medicine when we're always focused on just looking at the disease nature of the being, or the pathology, if you will. But instead of looking always at the disease or the pathology, we can look at the ways to just correct and return back to health and health span and longevity, because that's always there. That's always a possibility. And a lot of the conditioning and a lot of belief systems that we have, especially in the Western conventional medical system, even in our alternative health systems, it's very focused on disease and pathology and what your body is doing wrong. But in order to make it to this point in life, it has to be doing everything right, or you wouldn't be here. And so we can focus on that and change our lens a little bit and really move forward with the inputs and the choices that will influence that nature, that very essence of the life you've been given. And you'll see dramatic improvements in the quality of your being, both mental, spiritual, and physical, because it becomes an expression, right? That your whole being and your whole body is working through, and your physical nature has no choice but to change. It has to follow the rules that are here, right?
So if I get this right, reason why magnetism comes first in this protocol is because we're returning to a state of home to then proceed with the second, I guess, modality or element, which is oxygen. And I just kind of want to know, why does that come second? Maybe you can speak on that.
For sure. So what we really can kind of drive home in this moment is an invitation for people to understand a little bit deeper that magnetism in its function basically recalibrates your electrical and magnetic body or system and circuitry in your physical nature. And it creates space, the proper space, by that signature fingerprint, and it creates optimal flow. So if you have a hose, let's just use a hose as an example. So if you have a hose that a boulder is sitting on, or there's a kink in it, the flow is not going to get through, right? It might trickle out, or there might be a few drips, but you have an impedance in that channel, right? And so we have to consider that our body is an electrical and a magnetic conductor. And if there are impedances, if there's any kinks or distortions or impedances in that electrical system, then we're not going to get the space and flow that's optimal to deliver the nourishment and the nutrients that your cells require in order to build up your energy and to repair and regenerate. And so oxygen is a nutrient that is essential for life. And we're always able to breathe it in. And we're always able to have it nourish us. But if we have impedances that are going to certain areas of our body that disease is forming, or dis-ease, right, distortion is forming, then without the oxygen, it cannot get better. So when we have magnetism first, it ensures that your system capability for delivery of nutrients and nourishment to the tissues and to the cells, therefore to the mitochondria, which helps to generate more energy through ATP, that's the currency for healing anything in your body. So your body has to have that oxygen in order to make ATP that your body can then utilize to generate more healing, repair, and regeneration in its processes. And your body's intelligence does that on its own. Our jobs are really to make sure that we're listening and that we're doing everything that we can to optimize the body's transport system and delivery of the nourishment that's required for life to the tissues, to the cells. Therefore, it can generate what's needed for the body to heal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So like we're starting with this sense of normal, which is grounding. That's what grounding actually means, to be normal.
Right.
And we can supercharge this.
Natural.
PEMF. But then oxygen is delivering what we actually need.
Yes.
To either recover or feel better or just live, right? We need oxygen to live.
Yeah.
And then next comes red light.
Yes.
And perhaps you can speak on behalf of that. And after you speak on behalf of red light, if you had someone who might be a bit skeptical of these three modalities, what would your perspective be for them to have more of an open mind?
So I think for most people, there's always skeptics, and I think there should be. I think you should always question everything with a certain degree of curiosity, but also with openness, right? Because if anyone sits back and actually looks at the amount of information that there is no way that we can know as mankind, as human beings, because we are limited. We're limited in what information we can take in compared to the information that is available every second of every minute of our entire lives, right? We are not the be all end all, but we sometimes forget that and have this hubris where we think we know everything. So we go around with this certainty. And so I would say that it's wise to question what you think that you know for certain, as well as what you are asking me here, right? Question how well is that your treatment preference working for you? Or question how does, let's just use ultrasound in medicine. How does ultrasound work? It works by sound. How does magnetic resonance imaging, MRI, how does that work? Well, it works by magnetism, by utilizing the principles of magnetism as a tool and directing it in a fashion and in a manner so that we can see inside our bodies. So if you don't believe in magnetism, then you don't believe in MRIs. How could you, right? It doesn't make sense. So you have to have all of these things to make sense for us. Lasers. How do we break up kidney stones most of the time now? It's with lasers. That's light. So when we understand what these fundamental principles are, and that we are in fact utilizing them in conventional medicine a lot for mostly diagnostic, but in some ways, as I've mentioned, for treatment also, they're already being used and you don't understand them, but you accept them because of the authority and the certainty through which somebody is telling you this is what you need. So my approach is just different in the sense that I don't believe that I should tell anyone what they need to do. I have been trained and trained very well, I believe, with the fundamental principles of what medicine actually stands for, which is informed consent and bodily autonomy, and empowering the patient to understand and make their decisions based on the information that I'm presenting. And so the information I'm presenting is different, and it's, sometimes not well understood because it's more based on physics than it is on biochemistry. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty of, or even just, trying to understand this from a very sort of easy way to look at it, the same things are being utilized in conventional medicine, and they're accepted and not questioned for the utility or their effectiveness in conventional medicine, but they are for alternative medicines all the time. And that only comes down to the belief systems that people have succumbed to or surrendered to by choice. So infrared light, though, is really one of the most fascinating modalities that we can really understand. And we see it every morning and we see it every night. And it's a guarantee. And it's an absolute fundamental universal truth. The sun is going to rise and the sun is going to set. And that is what infrared light is developed from. So infrared light modalities, or the lights that are beds or panels or home devices, that kind of thing. The infrared light and what it does for your body is that it reduces inflammation and it creates an expanded plasma version of water, which is another state of water. We can talk about that. It's a 4-state of water called plasma, and it expands that. And that is biological, living, intelligent water that is flowing through your body. And when it expands upon that, it means you have more of that available for your tissues and for your cells. And it's used in every single process, every single protein unfolding, every single enzyme creation and reaction, and it's essential. And so it's giving your body more of that. It also, one of the biggest things that it does is it helps your skin recover from all sorts of different conditions that medicine calls eczema or psoriasis or whatever other names they might put on some skin conditions. But it really helps your skin repair and regenerate. Helps your body release toxins that are stored in your subcutaneous fat. Your body is so super smart that when it gets toxins or different chemicals that it doesn't like and it can't utilize, it pushes it out to your subcutaneous fat and it gets stored there if it can't release it. And so infrared light helps your body release that and get rid of it, breaks it down into smaller particles to release it. And I think most importantly, it actually helps your body's mitochondria. So there's a lot of talk these days about the mitochondria, which is amazing because they are fascinating little organelles that are inside each cell that you have. And you have, 50 to 70 trillion cells in your body. And when we really consider, we have more mitochondria than we do have cells. So they have an enormous function, an enormous significance in our body. And so let's unpack that a little bit. What is their significance? Well, it is to generate the energy that your body requires for all of its functions all of its processes, all of its movements, all of its brain activity, every single thing, plus repair, regenerate, and heal. So not only does your body need enough energy to do what it normally does, it's constantly healing and repairing. And that energy needs to be ramped up a little bit if you are dealing with anything that is, outside of the spectrum of being really well. And so it helps your mitochondria not only improve how well it can generate energy, but it actually improves your mitochondrial system, its network. So the quality and the numbers of mitochondria that you have, and it will improve autophagy, which is like getting rid of the mitochondria that are not able to really function anymore so that it can create more. And those things are really, really important and valuable, and they're often overlooked. And so when we focus on trying to improve the mitochondrial network in the human body, especially a human body that is trying to heal from a diseased state, it requires far more energy to do that. And so focusing on improving the mitochondrial network through electromagnetic energy, oxygen, and infrared light, and in that order of operations, so that your body is able to optimize and optimally receive the nourishment and nutrients where it needs to be.
That's awesome. Now, I imagine that there is a considerable synergistic effect that comes into play when you put these three in that particular order.
Mm-hmm.
And in, I guess, a holistic approach to health and wellness, including diet and exercise, how does this fit into play in all that? If someone, for example, if someone is struggling, let's say, with fatigue and mood disorders, perhaps brain fog, maybe they are actually struggling with the disease.
Mm-hmm.
How do these building blocks be used together to address that situation? Is it different for everyone? Does the same effect happen for everyone despite their unique situation?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So because each human being is uniquely different, there's no two people who will respond exactly the same. But in saying that, when we fundamentally continue to reduce biological life down to its most basic components, right? Where we're talking about on a molecular level, or, what do you start with if you're going to try to create a life, right? These are the absolute fundamental scaffolding, the building blocks, the raw materials that you have to start with. There's no other option. So every single body requires these essential elements. And they're also the ones in your body that are usually depleted or disorganized or untethered, if you will, inside our bodies, that is then leading to these other physical expressions of mental health issues, mood changes, sleep disorders, fatigue, not having enough energy. And when you start to replace these essential life-giving, life-promoting elements, you will start to feel life back in your body, life back in your mind. And those will be more connected and unified and congruent, because it's what you're built from. It's what you're made from. And so some people feel very quickly that they have improvement in their sleep. That's a super common report that almost everyone has. And when we really look at why that's happening, or when we break it down, we can see that as a body receives fundamental nourishment that it has been missing for a very long time, and the life that human has been living has actually been depleting their own biological living resources in their body, and we're giving some back to it, they will feel so good. And sleep is one of the things that your body really needs when it's healing, because when your body is at pure rest, that's when it can actually repair and regenerate. It's always doing it, but it does the most work and the best work when your body is able to be at pure rest. And so as your body receives the essential nature of its physical being, it has no choice but to start to respond and thrive because of it. And it's incredible because it's very simple and it's very gentle. And a lot of people don't even really feel like there's a lot to it, and they may feel it's just really relaxing, or, that it feels so good in your body. It does, because your body really needs it too. And so when your body responds in that manner and you feel good, better leaving than when you came to our clinic, it's a sure sign that your body has just been nourished with the parts that really, really needed to be replaced or optimized, if you will.
Yeah, I can definitely speak on that. I'm not starving, I'm not anxious, I'm just relaxed but energized, and I just feel great. And I guess as a final question for this one,
sure.
Can you share a story, perhaps in your practice here? You had a case where you've seen a significant health improvement with someone who was struggling with something specific, and perhaps you can speak on behalf of what happened.
Sure. Yeah, there's a number. So I think one that really stands out in my mind that I think a lot of listeners would probably relate to is, I won't use actual names of people, but we'll just use the initials JB. And when JB came in, he had what a lot of people suffer from: arthritis in the knees, back issues, chronic pain issues, mood issues, loss of function, and, a degradation of the quality of life because of all of that depleted function and decrease in activity. When he started, it was really a matter of, I would say, a week, maybe 3 treatments. And he started to really notice that his pain was improving dramatically to the point where he wanted to reduce his pain medication. And so that was huge. And then his mood started to improve. And then his function started to improve. And just bing, bang, boom, every day that he would come in, he would notice something else that was getting a little bit better. And every part of him was feeling stronger, more full of life, more capable, more able. And he was starting to get back to some of the things that he loved to do in life, like riding his bike, and going for walks with his wife and things like that. And this just shows that the totality of the human and the totality of the experience of the life of that human contribute to the expression that you have in your physical nature. And all of it's important. And there's nothing that we can leave out of the equation that's not contributing to some degree. When we start to treat the human from the most basic level and improve the factors that nobody's looking at, that nobody's talking about, and we improve those things first, and things and their symptoms and signs start to go away and improve, it's not because we're doing anything. It's because that body is receiving nourishment that is life promoting and life improving And as a result, that life is responding, and that life itself is thriving. And when we can see that happening in a human being, we can see how that will be transformative, right? The mood changes are likely a result of the deteriorating quality of physical being, but it contributes to the deterioration also. So when we can help show that physically you're able to improve even a little bit, that helps the mind and the mood and the emotions, which then helps the physical body receive better and heal better and treat itself better. And then you're going to see this different spiral upwards back towards life instead of downwards towards, death and despair. And so he was headed down to that trajectory, right? He was more sedentary. He was not able to move. And when you really consider that the body is almost all water, and I use this analogy a lot, what happens to water when it's stagnant? It festers. And it grows a lot of really nasty stuff. Your body is the same. So when you're able to move and you get function back, there's no question everything else will start to improve too, right? Your body is an enclosed, pressurized, electrical, aqueous being. When we think about exactly what the body is made of and how it functions and the rules that it needs to follow, and we just respond to those and apply those, we can have dramatic improvements in some of the most difficult to treat conventional medical terms and labels. But there's a lot of people out there that have had chronic pain. And most of them are at the point where they have no options left, and their doctors or their specialists are telling them there's no other options. And that's simply not true. It's simply not true. If you're open and you're curious and you're willing to try a new approach, then, I think this would be well worth at least trying. There's nothing that it can do to harm you, which is the other caveat of what medicine is meant to be, is to first do no harm. And so as a medical doctor, I'm not practicing medicine anymore. And so none of this is medicine or medical advice or a medical approach, but it's my approach, right? It's my medicine, and it's proprietary to me. And I know it's true. I know it does no harm, and I know it does a lot of good. And so those factors, when a person comes and meets with me and talks with me and we come up with a plan, it's life-changing for them as long as they show up for themselves.
How do you envision the future of health and wellness practices, I guess, on a holistic level, especially with the integration of these foundational building blocks? Or an amazing story like what you shared with JB, and how I'm sure there's many more.
Yeah.
What do you see looking forward that maybe you could share your advice on or thoughts on?
Yeah, great. These are beautiful questions. So I do see the future of medicine shifting and changing, because it's, at this point in time, it's undeniable that something's got to give. Something's got to change in terms of how we're treating human beings, first and foremost, and also our focus. And so I think that, and I hope that my role in all of this is partially to, help and encourage that shift a little bit, because when we can use a different lens to look at life and look at physical body, look at health, what does that mean to you? How do we get you there instead of focusing on what's wrong all the time? So it's a very different perspective. It's a paradigm shift. I do think that will happen at some point in time. At least I certainly hope it does, because I have seen the differences. I've been in both worlds, and I hope to be a bit of a bridge actually in helping evolve this movement towards looking at the whole human, looking at life from its totality and understanding the nature of what actually gives rise to life itself. And so when we look at those principles, obviously those are the principles that are used for healing too. Naturally, it has to be. And I think fundamentally, there are a lot of exciting things on the horizon for different health technologies and options that are similarly as essential and as basic and as natural as the ones we've just talked about, which hopefully we'll get into in another episode. But when, a little teaser, but there's plasma technology, and understanding the nature of plasma, understanding the nature of water, that really we are water. Understanding the nature of things, I think, is where the academics and intellectuals of the future need to go, or they'll become obsolete. Because as the shift is already happening, the effects of these very real, very primordial modalities, if you will, are undeniable. The limitations of medicine are undeniable. So I think we need to come together in more of a collaborative effort and develop something totally new. Not this or that, not a medicine versus alternative option, not chiropractic versus physio or massage, like none of those, this or that. Life doesn't have to be this dichotomy or this binary. There's a spectrum, and there's always another option that's usually balanced in the middle. And I think bringing these worlds together, because there's such tremendous value and tremendous accomplishments in medicine, that should never be left out either. If we're being totally honest, we can work together to create true health and true vitality in the vast majority of people, so that our systems are not overrun, and we can actually get back to, a more reasonable type of medical system as well. So that's what I envision. Will that happen exactly? Probably not. But, I think my role and my goals at least are to contribute to the courageous conversations to get there, and the vulnerability that's required to kind of join those worlds together. I have not only the training and not only the education and not only the experience of one of those worlds, but I have both, and I'm also in the middle. And so I think there's a lot of new frontiers that hopefully we'll see. And I do also think what we will see is a lot of maybe private, independent people that are kind of venturing outside of the system as outliers, and doing things like what I'm doing. Maybe not what I'm doing, but because I'm me and somebody else will be them. But I think we might be looking at people doing very different independent private clinics or centers that are going to be focusing more on how do we get you to the health and vitality and well-being that you want, right? As the person, as the life, as the being, and not so much as a focus on group kind of approaches to treatments of any kind. So yeah, that's what I see coming.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I love how it's not a this or that. You are
right.
You can try many things and find out what works for you. I'm sure with the right intention and the right people and the correct approach, you can solve whatever it is you're trying to solve.
Absolutely. Isn't that what part of life is, right? Is It's an experiment to figure out how do you get to who you want to be, where you want to be, and when you want to be there. And I don't think anyone has that figured out yet, or there would be some kind of a, process to follow that would be similar for each person, but it's not. But I do, there's so much to life, and the creative nature of life and the qualitative nature that we are, which is a whole topic we should really explore. Is this qualitative versus quantitative approach to looking at life and humans, and even just your bodies, right? We could go into a whole cool set of discussion topics there. But we are qualitative. Our nature and our being is qualitative. It is not measurable. You cannot do lab work and ever show the totality of Jesse, right? Or of Dr. Crystal. You just can't. And there's no replicating it. There's never going to be another Jesse. There never was another Jesse. It's like a snowflake. And that is really important to keep at the forefront of everything that we're doing, because otherwise the person and the individual and the human being get lost in it all. And it becomes something different than it was ever intended to become. And then that's how we can go down different trajectories. But the whole future, I think, is super bright, because it's bringing it back to what really matters, which is the being, the life. The life that you lead is the medicine that you essentially require for your health, right? Yeah.
There is a lot to learn. I'm sure we'll have many more really fascinating discussions. Thank you for sharing some time today.
Thank you.
I guess we'll wrap up now.
Sounds great. Thanks, Jesse.